Hi, my name is Shania, and I'm starting this YouTube channel as a place for me to kind of yap about books. And it'll be like 10-minute video summaries about why I like the book, why I don't like the book, or and like I'll try to spoil as little as I can, but there will be spoilers. So if you're interested in reading the book, like I'll first give a general summary, and then I'll tell you when the spoilers start, so that then you can, I don't know, not watch the video further. But yeah, for the first video, the book I've chosen is something I read like 3 years ago when I was in 8th grade, and I even convinced one of my friends to read it, and she loved it too. It's a very dense book, but it's Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I think that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, and it's dystopian literature. It's fantasy fiction essentially. There's like superpowers and all those like fantasy world building similar to, I guess, Harry Potter. But what it does do is it deals with a lot of real serious issues, and there's romance too. So anyone who's interested in romance, like, this book covers that as well. But it also covers other issues and other aspects of someone's life, so it's not like focused entirely on the romance. Like, it's a huge part, but it also focuses on friendships and relationships with parents, siblings, the overall society, stuff like that, because it is about essentially a revolution. It's like a fantasy version of an actual revolution occurring, which is, I guess, every dystopian fiction book ever. Like, I remember when all those movies started coming out, The Maze Runner and Hunger Games. Like, I guess that's the plot of most dystopian literature. But yeah, I made notes. Let me just look for it. Yeah. So I think first I'll talk a little bit about the writing style, because one of the reasons it took me kind of a while to finish this book is because, like, if I open a random page, you'll see it's like a little dense. I guess now it looks a little less scary, but when I was in 8th grade, these were a lot of words on one page, and the book itself is kind of like thick. Yeah, thick. So it's a really dense book, and because it deals with so many real issues, like, obviously quoted under the ruse of, like, fantasy fiction and all this dystopian stuff and magic and superpowers and all that, but it does give, what I like is, it's not like magic. It gives a scientific grounding to magic, similar to, if you know, like, the Shadow and Bone series. The Grishaverse and the powers of the Grisha come from a very scientifically grounded perspective, and I think Red Queen also does that really well. And there are 4 books in the series. I read the first 2. I haven't gotten to the last 2. I will get there eventually, but yeah, my favorite is the first book, and I think a lot of people agree on this. So wait, I'll give like a general overview on the writing style so you know what you're getting into. The narrative perspective is first person, and it's from the main character Mare Barrow's perspective, and it creates like a level of intimacy with her, because you're like constantly listening to her thoughts and her perspective on everything that's happening. But it also creates a bias, because, like, she can be an unreliable narrator, and it's important, like, when you're viewing the whole story, you don't know a lot of the pieces because of this main focus on Mare Barrow's perspective, right? um for example, like, in chapter 1, because I think I was like rereading the first chapter before I made this video, she keeps having like these thoughts, like, don't think about this or don't think about that. Like, it gives you a perspective into her coping mechanisms, and she's a very complex character, so I think it's very important that it was first person, because without first person we wouldn't understand a lot of what she went through and what she's always thinking and going through. It's a fast-paced book, but at the same time slow-paced. I know that's kind of like contrasting. It's a juxtaposition if you think about it, but it has like the action comes really fast. Like, within the first chapter, the action has entered, but the actual dense climax and all of that comes much later in the book. And even in, like, it this book ends in a cliffhanger, and the story is further taken forward in the second book. And even the second book, I don't remember if it ends in a cliffhanger. I remember this one did because I was so angry that it ended in a cliffhanger. But the second book as well, like, it leaves a lot of scope because there are 4 books in the series, right? But the action is, there's like always action happening. So there's like fights, like they get stuck in the ruse of the silver world. So in this world there are red-blooded people and silver-blooded people, and the silver-blooded people have superpowers, so they're like seen as better or superior than the red-blooded people. And Mare Barrow is a red-blooded person, obviously, but in the first or second chapter itself, it gets revealed that she has superpowers, which is very odd. Like, no one knows why or how, right? For example, like, up until, like, the plot keeps escalating. Like, there's personal survival, political conspiracy, and there are like recurring motifs of blood, crowns, and betrayal. And eventually, I'm not going to spoil it. There's one thing I'm not going to talk about, like what the plot twist is, but the final plot twist kind of leaves you, it's like a very jarring thing that happens, right? And the language itself, I think one of the reasons I kept reading is because I love sensory language, and it's like this book uses a lot of vivid and sensory language. Like, it focus on contrast, it focus on, like, their sentences like, I think I wrote this one down, the stink of bodies itself in chapter 1, or the so this is when you're talking about the people who come from the red blood society, and these are inherently people who are poor because they're being exploited by the silver blooded people, right? And then when she describes the opulence of the silvers, then she uses words like cushioned chairs and electric lights, and electricity is something that is very scarce for the red blooded people, right? So the choice of this language, like this choice, like the way she phrases the words kind of creates a division in your mind while you're reading itself. So another thing that I really liked is the way that the not superpowers, I guess, like the magical powers are portrayed. I think it's an extremely dynamic way. Like, the powers are always rooted, like each of the different types of powers, like fire, electricity, these are all rooted in very real things that we are familiar with, right? But people can control it. That's what makes them special. And there's like, again, when the type of language that's used, it's like sparks blaze to life in my skin. She says that at some point, I don't remember when, but this is kind of symbolic of her, like the electricity within her. And it's that, like, not including her powers, she's still a very electric person, and that's what, like, has always helped her survive till the time it was revealed that she had superpowers. Then there's also symbolism in the form of, like, when she's describing the silvers, like flaming crown, right? The ones in the ruling family, the sun controls fire, so it's a very direct form of symbolism, I guess. The tone and the theme, I guess, another thing that drew me to it, it's very cynical and rebellious, and I guess to teenagers that appeals a lot. Mare's voice blends humor and bitterness and hope, so she's always like making dark humor jokes, and she's not a very optimistic person, especially initially in the book when she's not even confident about herself or her powers. But eventually it does lead to hope, like, as people around her, like the characters around her, I'm forgetting the name, but there's the leader of the revolution, the underground revolution, becomes a very important character in Mare's life, who helps Mare see her own strength and, like, value. So I think that's a very important part of it as well. And I think some examples of her, like, dark humor is, like, she keeps, like, she has a best friend named Kilorn, and they are always, like, cracking jokes at each other, and there's a lot of edgy dialogue involved. But there's also, like, a recurring theme, and, like, the whole book is blanketed with themes of trust and mistrust, right? Like, things like anyone can betray anyone is a recurring theme throughout the book, right? Which is what, like, I think this is one of the parts that makes the final plot twist just so jarring. Like, I was shocked, and my friend who I convinced to read the book, she was also like, oh my god. Then I spoke about how, like, there are very real themes involved in this, which is true. right? Like the theme of corruption um is woven into the narrative, but it's not like a moral, it's not about morality. Like there's no moral of the story. And in the first book itself, like the people who are corrupt or objectively bad, they like they don't get very harsh consequences for their actions, right? Like I feel like it goes very deep into building how powerful individuals are, and the fact that like most stories try to tell you, oh, justice is served, but in Red Queen specifically, like justice is not served. And that's a huge thing that happens in the book that I really like it's a very real book, because if you look at like the real world as well, um corrupt people exist, bad people exist, and they're not always brought to justice. So the fact that this book chooses to take that path in the narrative, that appealed to me at least. um there's, I feel like one thing that I think I didn't like was there was a lot that you had to piece together. Like I was really confused while reading the book, like for half the book, who is who, where is she, what is she doing, all those kind of things, right? um and that's because the writing is really dense. Like there's a lot of descriptive language, there's a lot happening at the same time. So like it's like a map, like you have to create a map in your head while reading it to remember who comes from where. But what helps with this is like the symbols connected to each place and character. Like for the silvers, it's the symbol of the castle that they like reside in, and for the reds it's the simple symbol of the stilts, which is like the place that they live in, where like, and most of them are poor. So all those like symbols help, but there's a lot of mapping that I had to do when I was reading the book. But yeah, this is like a general overview. um One thing about, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the world building. So there's like a social hierarchy like I've spoken about, and the society is like rigidly split between reds and silvers. Reds are ordinary humans with red blood living in poverty, conscripted to endless wars at the age of 18, if they're unemployed or unapprenticed. So I think this is a huge plot point because Killorn, who is Mare's best friend, loses his job. And then because of that, he's at risk of getting conscripted to the war where most people go and die. I think she lost a brother to the war. So that becomes a huge thing. And they're treated basically as disposable assets. Like, they're treated essentially, um, okay, they're treated like dirt. Yeah. And silvers with the silver blood are the ruling elite, possessing godlike abilities, like they control fires as burners, which is the family that Mare is involved with. They manipulate metal as magnetrons, and they mind control as whispers, super strength as strong arms, or freezing as shivers, right? This divide is enforced through propaganda. So there's propaganda plays a huge role in this book. Like, this is another thing that I enjoyed because it's a very real thing that happens. Like, if you go back to our history classes, if you go back to the Cold War, propaganda is part of our real world. The way we think is influenced by some form of propaganda, right? So that's a huge part of this narrative, and that's one of the reasons I enjoyed it. The silvers consistently demonstrate their superiority to the intimidated reds, and the blood distinction symbolizes inherent inequality, right? So the silvers claim divine right to rule, viewing reds as inferior, which is, if you think about it, this has happened before. But yeah, the setting is like Norta. It's a militarized kingdom, and like I don't think I'll go specifically into the geography. Like as you read it, you'll understand it, because if I say it right now, like you won't understand it either way. So yeah, there's just like one thing that you should know is like there are rebels that exist before Mare, right? So it's like unlike that's one of the things I did actually enjoy. Like in the Hunger Games, I guess there was a network of rebels, District 13, if I'm not wrong, before Katniss Everdeen. Similarly, here, like, Mare doesn't ignite an all-out revolution. She actually becomes an important tool to one that already exists, because she's the first person of red blood to possess magical abilities or like whatever superpowers, right? Then I'm not going to talk like much about the politics and governance, but I'll talk about like um the what the rebels are. The rise red as dawn. That's a recurring again motive throughout the book. And okay, there are a lot of spoilers in this and I don't want to say them. I did like, yeah, when I was writing it down, like I was writing everything down, but now that I realized like I'm not gonna tell you the specifics so that you can figure it out while reading it. Uh oh yeah. Okay, I can talk about the war and economy. Like the general before you start reading what you should know is that the Lakelander war, so there's a war, ongoing war, it drains reds through conscription, like I spoke about before, and the silvers consistently profit, right? Again, very real situation in our world, if you think about it. And the villages, they suffer from poverty, disease, mandatory events like feats, and here, like, because I told you that their powers are grounded in very real science, technology also plays a huge role in enhancing their powers, right? Electric shields, video screens, transport exists in this world. But Reds are denied any form of education and opportunity. So they are not given the opportunity to propel themselves further, which is why their condition and their poverty keeps getting exacerbated, right? And I guess I won't speak much about the history because even again, if I speak about it, like you're not gonna understand what I mean. While reading it, you'll like be introduced to characters who reveal like this goes back to me saying that you need to map while reading the book, right? So characters will reveal a lot about Norta's origins in Silver Conquest over Red's centuries ago. And there'll be a lot of maps that they talk about and you will understand more. But again, propaganda plays a huge role in covering up any form of failures that the Silvers incurred, right? So that, like, remember, propaganda is a huge part of how Mare views the world because she has been fed this propaganda since she was a little girl. So yeah, I think that's like the general synopsis of the book. I hope this made you interested in reading Red Queen. I may do one for the second book, but I'm probably not going to do it right now because I need to finish the book. I don't think I've finished the book. But yeah, okay. See you next time.